I mean, I would never interrupt a school event. I interrupted the land acknowledgement before the school event. And, I don't think teachers have any right to be lecturing parents about politics.
Hi, I'm Amy Hamm with the New Westminster Times. This week I sat down and had a chat with Lisa Bildy. She is both a lawyer and the executive director of the Free Speech Union of Canada. She recently started representing a BC mother named Lara Yates. The case is about land acknowledgements, which, as we know, are extremely contentious in British Columbia right now, especially in the fallout of the Cowichan ruling, which has thrown private property rights into question throughout the entire province. According to the Free Speech Union's website, Lara Yates, on December 4th, 2025, during an evening drama class presentation, voiced her opposition to the opening land acknowledgement ritual by calling out, quote, "Save us your race baiting," and similar comments. She remained seated and quiet for the rest of this presentation. Later that night, the drama teacher identified to students backstage the parent who was responsible for this disruption. Lara's daughter was bullied and mocked by her peers, resulting in her distress, of course. The principal responded by calling in a counselor to assess the situation. The incident was ultimately reported to the Ministry of Child and Family Development. The ministry then interviewed Lara's children. Ultimately, they closed the case because they found nothing of concern. The next day, Lara received a letter from the principal of the high school banning her from attending her child's school until at least January 31st. Due to concerns about the bullying and the staff behavior towards her daughter, Lara decided to keep both of her minor children away from the school. She contacted the Free Speech Union, of which she was already a member. Lisa Bildy with the Free Speech Union of Canada sent a letter to Superintendent Care on January 13th of this year, advising the superintendent that the drama teacher and the principal's actions were reprehensible, intentionally threatening in the face of political dissent, and that the decision to ban Lara from the school over her expression was improper and contrary to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Here's the conversation that I had with Lisa and Lara. I think that in this sort of situation, a lot of parents don't necessarily know that they would have a right to free expression. So can you maybe tell us in what sort of situations can we expect to be able to speak freely?
Sure. And I will say we have had some correspondence just in the last couple of days now from the school and from the superintendent. So the appeal is progressing, and I'll be a little careful what I say about Lara's case, just because things are kind of right in the middle at the moment. They take the position essentially that that this caused harm to the learners at the school and the school community, and that's why they had to issue this order, and we're challenging whether they had the authority to do that. The in terms of the rights for people to speak up, bear in mind that the public schools are public bodies, and so therefore the Charter of Rights and Freedoms does apply to them. They don't have the right to prohibit speech just on the basis that it's political speech they don't want to hear. There may be circumstances where it may not be appropriate to speak for whatever reason, but they can't just target somebody for the type of speech that they are expressing. And actually, we saw a case recently that the Free Speech Union has also helped out on, and that was involving another BC parent by the name of Bryony Dixon, who had posted something on her Facebook page, and the school didn't like that. So they issued a similar sort of order that banned her from her child's school. And we ended up fighting that as well, and the school superintendent actually dropped the order before it went any further. But you can see that the schools are starting to get a little bit more aggressive about policing the opinions of parents outside of the school system. In Lara's case, it was an after-school event, but if they hear something that they don't like, they want to be able to curtail it if they can, or punish it in this instance. And in our position, they have no authority whatsoever to punish parents for their political views.
That's interesting, and the New Westminster Times has covered this. Actually, the New Westminster School District in the last year has released this new sort of sweeping policy, and it describes everyone. It sounds really nice. They describe them as members of the learning community. But in effect, that means that their policy applies not only to students, but to parents. And the policy can sort of police social media. So it's the same thing where they're attempting to control the speech of parents on social media, which, like you mentioned, happened in Breonna Dixon's case. It's pretty wild, the way that they're trying to exert control over the lives of families and parents. So you mentioned Breonne's case. Are there other similar cases that the FSU is taking on right now?
Yes, we've had a couple of others where we've expressed our concerns. So again, I'm sometimes we'll take on a case and hire a lawyer, and right now that's mostly me. Although we're building a legal network, so we can have other lawyers take cases that the Free Speech Union can fund. But there are sometimes where we're not the lawyer of record or anything like that, but we just want to express concern. And we did that with a couple of other situations in Ontario. One where a parent tried to object to the land acknowledgement very respectfully as part of a parent council meeting. And that was Catherine Cronus. And she was basically removed from future meetings until she did get counsel with the Justice Center, who helped her on that one. And another instance with a father who expressed some criticism, I think, of the school principal on social media. And he received a letter telling him to take down his post, which we objected to. The school has no right to tell you what you can say or not say on social media. It's ridiculous. So we're seeing this broader trend towards schools. They're facing the heat because I think maybe they don't appreciate that they have become politicized, because sometimes fish don't see the water they swim in. But for a lot of Canadians, we see schools becoming increasingly politicized. And as a result, parents are getting frustrated. They don't want their kids to necessarily go to a school where they have to go because, there's a law saying you have to educate your children. And the options beyond public school are limited. So parents are getting quite rightly frustrated in many cases. And the schools are doubling down essentially and saying, well, not only are we going to continue with our politicization of the schools, but we're going to step in and scold you or try to ban you or whatever if you express displeasure to it.
That's wild. And I know in Breonne's case, they even sort of threatened to get the police involved if she showed up on school grounds, which is just insane. And so the Free Speech Union it was initially founded in the UK. And so you're executive director of the Canada chapter. Are these the sort of cases that the UK is dealing with as well? Or is this more of a Canada specific problem that we're seeing?
I expect so. I don't know of any one in particular that deals with a school, but there is a situation with, our systems are quite different in many ways. And one of the ways that a parent was affected was he said something on Twitter, I think, or X, about the stabbing situation in Southport, and ended up getting the police come to his residence, and I think he actually was charged, and then that was dropped. But while he was successful with the help of the Free Speech Union there on his criminal charge, then all of a sudden he gets he's a coach for his kids' sports team, and somebody complained to the safeguarding board, and he lost his right to coach his child's sporting team. And so again, the Free Speech Union got involved there, and I'm not quite sure of the outcome, but that's the kind of thing. Like, he's got views. We heard about them because they were in the criminal courts, but even though he was exonerated there, or at least the charges were dropped, they still look for ways to try and punish him for having views that somebody feels are not appropriate.
Aside from what Lara did by engaging, she was already a member of the SFU, but by engaging you guys and getting legal help, do you have any sort of advice for other parents who are worried about this sort of power grab by schools, and what sort of actions they might take to try to prevent this thing from happening, or to discourage schools from behaving as though they have the power to control the political views and the speech of parents and families?
Yeah, I think you just have to be very aware and alert as to what's going on in your children's schools and participate as much as you can. And hopefully, you can come out and volunteer and do things that help you to see what's going on, but also build a bit of a relationship at your children's school, if that's possible. And I think you can go through all the sort of normal, proper channels for communicating your concerns about things take it to the board, take it to the superintendent, and so on, you might not get anywhere with that. And so, yes, sometimes you may very well feel like your only option is to say something publicly or speak up at a school board meeting or what have you. And they don't really like that. Now, again, if you were saying something that was in keeping with their own political views, chances are there would be no consequence. We see that time and again, that there's a double standard. But if you say something that they would find goes against their ideological perspective, then you may, for doing that, face a similar kind of thing to what Lara is going through. And obviously, it's hard to have to deal with legal issues, and you don't want to have to be banned from your children's school, and you don't want to have to fight it. But sometimes speaking up is really the only option that's left. And the Charter does protect our ability to have our own opinions, our own thoughts, our own and express things as we see fit. The schools don't have the right to police or punish parental views. They don't have the right to punish parents. The only thing that they can do is, if it's appropriate, and we say it wasn't here, but if it's appropriate, they can issue like a trespass order or a ban from the school. But it has to be a safety issue. And so parents, I think, just need to be a little bit careful not to try and engage that any more than necessary. And sometimes it is necessary just to speak up because there's no other avenue. But bearing in mind what the limits of their power are, you try to navigate around that as best you can. And but I don't think you should be quiet about it. I think it's fair to complain that your children's schools are being politicized, and take it to your political representative as well, your MLA in BC or whatever province. It's a provincial jurisdiction, so complain, make your voice heard.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for us in BC, so many of those MLAs and MPs are NDP members who would want to enforce the same ideological worldview. So,
yes, that is a problem. I mean, fair enough that you may not get the political result that you want. And at the end of the day, sometimes parents are just going to have to say, look, I'm going to have to find another alternative to having my kids in the school. And that doesn't work for everybody, I fully acknowledge. But if you can, and you feel like that's best for your family, then there are alternatives in terms of homeschooling or alternative schooling. They're not funded. That's the problem, right? So you have to either have a parent stay home or work part-time or pay out of pocket if you're having somebody else teach your children. So public schools are unfortunately kind of captured at the moment, and it is the only game in town if you want to have a free public education.
That's so true. I would love to be able to homeschool my kids, and I can't as a single parent. And that's why I also have so much appreciation and respect for parents like Lara, like Brioni, who you mentioned, that are taking this fight down the route that they're taking it, and for the FSU and for you for doing this as well, because it is really important. Not everyone has any option other than public school. So it's important, I think, that we do reform our institutions, make them better, make them work for our kids. So speaking of that, Lara, you know, there was this mention that you've tried to engage with the school before this incident happened and talk to them about other political issues, including land acknowledgements. So it didn't really go anywhere. Do you want to sort of tell us about how that looked?
Well, it's just a lot of emails and phone conversations and just conversations that I've had with teachers and principals over 10, 12 years now. The land acknowledgements have been more for the last 4 or 5 years. It's usually phone conversations, and it always just comes down to, no, this is the way we do things. They always say it's about their diversity program and inclusivity, and I see no diversity at the school except maybe in superficial ways like skin color or orientations or whatever, but no one's allowed to have their own opinion. There's not a single staff member who would ever say that they're not for whatever they're told to be for, and so it always just goes nowhere. And I've called the superintendent, and I've gone through these channels, but No one listens. I mean, I would never interrupt a school event. I interrupted the land acknowledgement before the school event. And, I don't think teachers have any right to be lecturing parents about politics. I don't appreciate it from them. I'm not looking for their opinions. That I'm there to see my kid in a play, and that's it. And I should be allowed to see my kid in a play, even if I don't support the NDP. The school should be welcoming to everyone, and that all kids deserve an education, even if their parents have different political opinions than what every single solitary staff member at the school has.
Yeah, I mean, some of them may not, but we would have no idea because
they'd be fired if they ever said it.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
They end up like Jim McMurtry,
There you go.
That's
you talked about DEI, and that's the thing, is it talks about diversity, but it never applies to diversity of opinion.
Never.
Everybody has to share the exact same values and beliefs in order to not be subject to sort of cancel culture or ostracization or an exclusion order from the school. How is all of this stress sort of impacting your daughters?
Well, I mean, they want to be in school, and disappointed that their teachers don't seem to care about them, that their teachers prioritize their politics over educating them. They've been out of school for almost 2 months. This is my eldest, who's still in the school program. She's in her grade 12 year and will likely fail this term because she's not there, and that feels unfair. This can affect her getting into university, and, she'll likely have to just repeat the year. She is being discriminated against. It really hurt her.
Yeah, no attempt to apologize or reach out to her at all. No.
Can
I just interject to say that we did request an apology, and that has not been forthcoming at this point. We're not finished the process yet, but this is in relation to the treatment after the event as well, where they kept her daughter after school, didn't let her go home until they had a counselor come in to assess her feelings, which were her feelings were a result of having been singled out by her teacher, not because of what her mother said, and then called Children's Services, of course. The order that's been made against Lara is not as against her children. Her children are still allowed to go to school, but also this was the same situation with Bryony Dixon's case. She kept her son home too, because who wants to send their kid to a place where you can't go? You're not allowed to go. And particularly when there's been this dynamic where the teachers, as they were related, had singled out her daughter and made her feel very uncomfortable, then it's very difficult to want to send your child into that environment. So that I just wanted to clarify that the ban doesn't prohibit the kids from going. Insisting on having a neutral public school system, I think, is a worthy goal for parents to fight for. And we've lost that in the last decade or two. And it's worth fighting to get that back, because every child should be included. They shouldn't be feeling like they don't belong there because they happen to have conservative views or be Christian or be male or be white or, anything that's being sort of not demonized, but certainly made to feel like they're from an oppressor group or something. This is the nature of this social justice ideology that is being taught in our schools. And so when the teachers object to you're saying something on the basis that it's a safety issue, people felt harmed by it, do they stop and reflect on how children who in their programs who have different views feel every day going into that environment, having to go into that environment and having to hide a big part of who they are and what they believe because it's not politically acceptable in their classroom. I'm old enough, I think maybe you and I, maybe Lara are, I don't know about Amy, but old enough to remember when teachers basically just taught their math and reading and you didn't know about their politics. You could go through your entire K-12 and not have a clue what any of your teachers' politics were. We don't have that
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. And
For
you
sure.
know, you're so right about not sending your kids. It would be like if your child was invited to a birthday party and the parents who invited your child over to their home said, "Your kid's welcome to come into my house, but I don't like you and I don't like what you think in your political beliefs, so you can't step foot on my property, but just send your kid in here."
Yeah,
Nobody in
exactly.
their right mind is going to send their kid into that environment. So why would, of course, you don't want your daughters going there.
You got it.
So it's the school needs to make this situation right. They need to do that. I found it so shocking that they involved the MCFD, the Ministry of Child and Family Development, which we know is it's an extremely overburdened resource dealing with like horrible abuses in the foster care system, so many terrible things going on, and the fact that they would use that resource to visit your family, it's just so shocking, and it seems like such intimidation and abuse, and that it was just designed to humiliate you. And I don't know how you would feel any other way about it.
Well, I mean, I feel angry as well. Yeah, social workers tend to be pretty smart, and most of them I think are pretty good at their job, and they can recognize when they're being used as a tool of harassment against, you know, people in the community. They know when that's what's going on, and our file was closed near instantly. Would we like to expect better from our schools? I mean, yeah, I do expect better from our schools, but these are the schools we have.
I really thank you for taking up this fight. Almost all of the parents I know in BC are very concerned about the state of our public school system and the indoctrination of our children. And this is sort of one of the more extreme examples of that. So thank you, Lara, and thank you so much, Lisa. And for the Free Speech Union of Canada, how can people join the SFU or get involved?
Yeah, you can go to www.fsucanada.ca and you can sign up as a member for a year, or you can make a donation. Everything we do is based on donor and member fees, and we don't get money from the government. We're not well funded. So if we want to be able to help people fight back against attempts to curtail their speech in Canada, then I hopefully people will come and join and contribute and help out. It's a way of sort of crowdfunding the battle, so that because I think, frankly, there are a lot of these kinds of cases that go on across the country, and in various circumstances, various institutions, and so on. And a lot of people just can't afford to go hire a lawyer to fight what might be, in the scheme of things, a small battle, but all these small battles add up. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved and start a chapter of the Free Speech Union here, so that we could have more cases where we push back, so we're not just constantly being steamrolled. And because when you do stand up, very often the other side backs down. They're trying to exert their power and their influence, and they're used to not having anybody do anything about it. So I'd like to change that, and that's what we're here to do.